I was on my binging spree, watching analysis upon analysis of indie horror games until I stumbled upon a video on mouthwashing. I tried watching it, but I didn't quite understand what they were talking about, so I turned that video off and went to watch his gameplay. I instantly fell in love. I've only heard of it earlier this month, yet only within 1 week of knowing it, I have dedicated hours upon hours watching, researching, and making my own analysis that you're viewing right now. I will continue the video under the assumption that you've already known the game and how the events roll out. If you don't, however, I highly recommend you watch a full playthrough with no commentary first. I've also put a link to a gameplay with commentary that I've watched in case you find it hard to stomach. With that out of the way, let's warm up with something lighter-hearted than what's listed at the start of this video. One thing I haven't seen a lot of people pointing out is the brilliance of the naming choices for the characters. You play as this guy, Jimmy, whom forcefully crashed the ship, disabling the actual captain, and then proceeds to roleplay in his position. I think the name Jimmy really fits what happens here, considering the meaning of it being supplanter, or he who supersedes and replaces. Anya, the shy and timid nurse, whom we learn later in the game to be mind-blowingly capable, with the ability to keep the former captain alive with only painkillers and some bandages. Anya means gracious and merciful, which directly ties to her "our worst moments don't make us monsters" belief, showing through her willingness to take care of Curly even when she thinks he was the one who crashed the ship. Daisuke is the youngest of the crew. People speculate he's in his 20s, which makes sense for he is the happy-go-lucky mechanic intern. The name Daisuke means great assistance. It especially shines through his eagerness to help Swansea at the beginning of the game, then getting stuck in the foam, and later on helping Jimmy, albeit under manipulation, when Anya locked herself in medbay. Finally, we have Swansea, the grumpy, well-seasoned mechanic who's too old to get a new job but not old enough to be retired. His name is the name of a location. However, I've seen someone theorize that he got his name through the parental behavior of swans, being aggressively protective and caring of their young, correlating with the relationship between him and Daisuke. It's a pretty cute theory. However, a lot more animals are aggressively protective of their spawns all the same, so I think it's more about his loyalty. Swans majorly mate for life, and I think that reflects his effort to be better for his family, despite how difficult it might be. Also, I think it's funny that Swansea got his name after a swan, an animal with such elegance and grace, while he looks like this. Okay, so what about the former captain, Curly? The man who everyone trusts and respects, aside from being the person Jimmy also envies. I guess he's named that because his hair is curly. I haven't been able to understand it yet, but I'll get there. I think the cleverness of the naming also extends to the title, Mouthwashing. It's an action, which is more or less futile if you think about it. It makes your breath smell nice. What else? It doesn't remove plaque, but that you have to brush and floss. And it sure as hell doesn't fix your dental problems, nor sore throat. Your breath might smell nice, but your poor dental health is still there. Much like Jimmy doing anything but the actual solution to alleviate the situation. What he did was just to feed in his illusion that he's fixed it. But in reality, his poor mental health is still there, and with every action he takes, it only gets worse. There's also the symbolism behind the entire cargo being just a non-essential that is mouthwash, but this guy said it first and said it better than I would, so do check his video out. This section will be devoid of Jimmy, the game character, as I will be talking about who he reminds me of. If you want analysis of Jimmy, you can check out my recommendations in the description box. I used to be romantically and sexually entangled with someone that is exactly like Jimmy to a T. And I'm very happy everyone in the fandom hates Jimmy. There's a commenter who said a similar thing to this. They said that fact makes them feel validated, and I do feel the same as that commenter. While I do see myself in Anya, I must admit my way of crying out for help was the worst way that I could have possibly done it, resulting in so many people turning away from me, even my two best friends. Anya once said, "Our worst moments don't make us monsters." I used to believe in that. What she meant that sentence for Curly, I believed in my equivalent of Jimmy way too much. It was the biggest mistake of my dating history. It's obvious that this phrase does not apply to Jimmy at all, nor the IRL version of Jimmy that is him. Fucking narcissist. Jimmy refused to admit that he was wrong, while he knowingly saw his mistakes and chose to keep hurting others, especially me. His reason? We all die in the end. Now, I'm all for nihilism, that's why I love Rick and Morty so much, but just because you see no meaning in life doesn't mean you get to ruin others. Another point I want to make before moving on is that the stance I have on shipping in this game. It has never crossed my mind considering how traumatic the themes of the game are, but I came across a comment analyzing what might make people support the ship between Jimmy and Curly. Now, I hate abuser with victim pairings as much as the next person, but this is referring to the pre-crash and to an extent pre-Tolpar Jimmy and Curly. Jimmy is extremely envious of Curly. He is insanely obsessed with him, to the point that he fantasizes about consuming his flesh to maybe even become him. The former anime weeb inside me says he fits the yandere archetype like a glove if he were to have a crush on Curly, while Curly himself believed in Jimmy too much, deliberately turning a blind eye to Jimmy's destructive actions. All of Jimmy's red flags are pink through Curly's rose-colored glasses. Sounds very much like putting your crush on a pedestal, right? Through this analysis, this pairing has a leg to stand on, and what happened in the game between the two would be added another layer of fucked up to it. Additionally, this reasoning opened my eyes to why my last failed relationships were so miserable. It was because I handled them like how Curly handled Jimmy, as in backing down and comforting my dysfunctional partners when they're out of line. Man, I love this game so much. This has been an epic journey of self-reflection. If you see yourself in Jimmy, it's not too late to get consulted by a professional. Jealousy is a human emotion, and you're not completely insane to have thoughts as negative as his. What separates you from a horrible man like him is the ability to be self-aware, get help, and put in an effort to get better. If you can't afford to have a therapist of your own, I've left a link in the description for you to find a helpline to talk to a mental health responder in your country for free. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. This took me so long to make, and I'm very grateful you stuck with me this long. If you like the art shown in the speed paints, please do consider commissioning me. I don't receive any monetary gain from making these videos, so it will help a small artist such as myself a lot. Now, without further ado, let's get on to the remaining segments. I really love the deep analysis videos that concluded Curly also had a hand in dooming the crew. He's a people pleaser who was too busy trying to stay on everyone's side to exercise his authority as captain on the crew, namely Jimmy. He brushed off Anya crying for help and enabled Jimmy to rape her. He went against the orders to tell the crew about the layoff when they're closer to their destination, and chose to tell them when they're celebrating his birthday. Way to go, ruining the crew's one of the very few ways of having fun. Jimmy already joked around in his psych evaluation. Curly said he'll do it for Anya, yet he still doesn't take it seriously. He didn't even tell Jimmy about how he was making her uncomfortable even after promising Anya that he'd do it. Curly is an enabler. Had he told Jimmy to knock it off and allow Anya to sleep at a lockable place, i.e. the med bay, Anya wouldn't have gotten pregnant, and she wouldn't have told Jimmy, leading him to spiral and crash the ship. Now, I'm not complaining or rewriting the game at all. It's incredibly written and spine-chillingly realistic as it is. Curly knew about Jimmy's criminal history, yet still choosing to let the monster on board. Yes, it was of good intent, he didn't expect things to spiral this badly, but that is no valid excuse. Not everyone deserves a second chance. He had his rights as a captain, but he chose not to use it. Curly was not innocent, and he got his punishment accordingly. He was forced into disability, experiencing the helplessness Anya had to go through whilst watching the whole crew die by the hands of Jimmy and enduring the gruesome abuse from that same monster. No one deserves to go through what he did, but neither did Anya. I have experienced so many times whenever I come to someone about my troubles regarding him. The listener would act dismissive and say something along the lines of, "Well, he didn't do anything to me. It's only you. So don't go and force your views onto me." The worst I've encountered was one girl twisting my words into as if I was enjoying it and then told her version to her posse. A lot of things happened to me in the last year and a half, so I'm just gonna stop myself from throwing a pity party now. All I ask of you to take from me is, don't be like Curly and enable abusers, especially after the victim has come and talked to you. They chose to talk to you for a reason. They trusted you. The least you can do is listen. After that, you'll be a shoulder to cry on and validate their feelings. Put your own views of the abuser aside for a moment if you know the abuser personally, and truly listen to what the victim says. Who knows? The worst people might be the ones you least expected. Now, I'm not telling you to be emotional trash cans or unlicensed therapists. You have your problems too. You can decide what to do after you've heard them out and recognize that that is an actual victim and not someone who's just trauma dumping. If you know someone who's going through the same thing as Anya or I did, but you can't help them yourself, you can redirect them to the same helpline fighting site I've included in the description. It has records of over 130 countries. And of course, I can't talk about mouthwashing without mentioning what I think of Anya, considering what I've described of my experiences. So, what does she mean to me as a character? It's clear how I think of her given the tone I mentioned her in so far, but I honestly don't want to call Anya my comfort character, even though we went through similar experiences and still having to see, work with, and be in the same room as our abuser every single day for entire months. I understand her jumpiness around Jimmy and how his wrongdoings render her frozen, and through that understanding, I can't help but feel like saying she's my comfort character is saying she's all that there is. Jimmy's victim. Well, she's much more than that. She's an incredible nurse with goals and aspirations. She's caring, understanding towards those who deserve it, and she's extremely resilient, putting up with so many stressful situations. She has the personality. She's her own person outside of the unfortunate girl that got traumatized by something out of her control. I know how devaluing it feels because I was once viewed like that. Since he was older than me and had a broader social circle, it's hard for me to get acquainted with new people or the upperclassmen that I looked up to without bumping into someone whom he knew personally. There was this one upperclassman that I admired. I started a conversation with him. We talked for a good while until I asked him if he knew who I was. X, right? I'm sure he meant no ill intention, but my heart really sank for a moment that I was unable to utter anything else. Why must my identity be tied to him? It's infuriating that Jimmy died thinking he's a hero. Then, that made me wonder, is it important that the criminal knows remorse, or for everyone else knows how horrible the criminal is? This really throws a wrench in the school of thought of live your life for yourself. Don't care about the opinion of others, don't you think? To illustrate what I mean, the only real-life example I can think of is Hitler. Adolf Hitler was a greatly important historical figure in which no positive connotation does that title carry, because his actions changed the course of the world. He was responsible for starting World War II, which resulted in the deaths of more than 50 million people. Additionally, Hitler was responsible for the Holocaust, the state-sponsored killing of 6 million Jews and millions of others. Horrible, horrible actions, yet when asked to sum up his experience of the Third Reich in one word, press adjutant of Nazi propaganda minister Wilfred von Ovid responded with paradise. From our perspective, we see that it is a nightmare, but through a madman's eyes, it's hope, it's bliss. What is to us the vilest act on humanity would be the madman's positivity, fate, and destiny, as the driving cause for that particular madness could be blinding positivity. The belief that they can make the world a better place, or just fixing the problems at hand. Yes, it is a complete echo chamber of self-fabricated illusions, but that's what makes these people so disconnected from us, from reality. I think it's safe to presume that Hitler died thinking he was a hero, but we sane people with functioning brains all know how much of a monster he was. In this case, it's pretty clear-cut that it's more important that everyone knew, because Hitler is already dead. He can't harm anyone anymore, and we can't continue to teach the next generations about the horrendous crimes he committed. But he's a historical figure. What about someone who has a smaller reach with people? Someone who is still alive? Someone who you personally know, who has deeply hurt you or a person you care about. In the game, everyone on the ship knew how much of a monster Jimmy was. Maybe except for Daisuke, innocent little kid who knows nothing but hopefulness. So does that count even if Jimmy felt no remorse for what he did to Anya, manipulating Daisuke to his death, blaming Curly for the crash, and killing Swansea for whatever delusional reason he came up himself? The theme of the game is undoubtedly taking responsibility. It ends with Jimmy shooting himself, taking the easy way out, while forcing Curly to live inside the cryopod, dumping all of the responsibility back onto him again. That's what made me think about the significance of whether the criminal feels remorse or everyone else is aware of how monstrous he is. I think most of us would wish harm upon him or say you'd outright kill him, which in my dictionary correlates to making him regret hurting anyone, i.e. making him feel remorse. But I doubt you'd actually carry out your murder fantasy for the majority of cases. So I guess we resort to spreading awareness, just like what we do in the case that we find out an online person is terrible in the form of call-out posts and most recent and mainstream event, Dogpack 404 and Mr. Beast. So, is the answer, it depends on the situation? Well, that is unsatisfactory to say the least, cause, let's say, in the case of Vivienne Medrano, people who know of her childish and disgustingly fetishistic behaviors make videos and posts, informing others. But they, as well as their comment sections, seem to be displeased for she has not learned her lesson. As for my case, one of my estranged best friends went to talk to him to try to unravel his psyche and maybe change him to feel remorse. His attempt was unsuccessful. But at least I have a case of someone choosing to teach remorse instead of informing others. I myself choose to inform people because if someone close to me were to hurt me or anyone that I care of, I would be too disgusted, disappointed, and furious to confront them. Sure, call me a coward, I don't care. But that doesn't mean I think my method has more weight than the other. Because if I were in Curly's position, it would not help much if I informed the rest of the crew how much of a creep Jimmy was to Anya. Maybe these two can be used as backup for each other. I think Anya would tell Jimmy to stop before going to Curly. So here she's informing others after failing to evoke remorse. I usually don't go deep into philosophical shit this excitedly by myself. Hell, I don't even believe in karma. and I hate having to sit through literature classes for this reason. But coming across Mouthwashing is by far the most insightful experience I've had in the past 18 winters of my life. It offers such an abnormal sense of comfort that I can't quite put my finger on. It is an amazing game with heavy but carefully handled topics in which is marvelously executed the writing as well as its character. I feel so seen, so understood by this indie horror game with low poly graphics and a bomb-ass fandom. This game is exactly what I needed to wind down, take a look at the people surrounding me, and then myself. Thank you very much for watching. It genuinely means a lot to me when you finish this video, because I put a lot of love into it. All of my references will be linked in the description box, and if you want to see more analysis videos from me, please let me know by liking, subscribing, and commenting. As you can see from my previous uploads, this is not the content I usually put out. So, while you're at it, feel free to suggest what I should make or analyze next. Again, I don't receive any revenue from doing YouTube, so if you like the art that you see, please consider commissioning me. I'm just an artist trying to get their art seen, so it'd mean the world to me if I were to have that support from you. Thank you so much for stopping by and staying till the end. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. See you next time.